Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about expectations. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, great video. I have a question about realistic expectations. I have been in finance for over 5 years, but I want to make a shift to become a front-end developer. I have studied the most important front-end technologies for close to 2 months now. I have solid understanding of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and with some help can build React apps as well. How can I make sure that I can do good work and get hired at this point? Thanks if you have some thoughts. Well, you're very unlikely to get a job after 2 months of practicing. Basically, I would say. The average time that you're looking to invest if you want to be a front-end developer, or any developer for that matter, is 1 to 5 years usually. That's how long it takes on average. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done. It's just that you are very unlikely to get a lot of callbacks for that amount of work, because let me sort of explain to you how getting into the industry sort of looks, or like how at the very least from my perspective things look at this point. So the first thing you need to know is that there is absolutely, if you probably heard this in some way or format, there's a high demand for software developers. But the thing that is lost in translation there is that the high demand is for mid-level to senior levels experiences, and these are people who have worked for, usually, say, okay, let's call it 1 to 5 years. The sweet spot is usually around 5 years. If 5 years plus or something like that, then you're basically human gold. It can start earlier than that. It's sort. I like to tell people that when you're trying to get into IT, it might be a ghost town for you, where like people might not reply to your CVs or like your emails or something like that. If you get 1 year, you're most likely, not always, going to see a change in attitude towards you. When you have 5 years or 2 years, like upwards with a few years of experience, it's like day and night, where the demand for your skills are so high that it's unlikely that you're going to have to look for a job. You're going to get people are going to ping you with job like application opportunities and stuff like that without asking for it. But that is for the people who actually know their stuff. Then there's another side to it, which we don't talk so much about, and that is the people who are trying to get into the industry. Now, the problem with getting into the industry is that there is a surplus, an enormous surplus of junior developers or people who want to become developers. That's not where the scarcity is. It's the experienced developers that are the problem to find. They're usually spoken for. And the problem is that there's only so many juniors that a company can take on, because the company needs to make money, and the reality is that it takes time and money and coaching and tutoring and all these sorts of things to get a junior developer to become productive and actually make money, because the threshold for making money in IT can sometimes be fairly difficult to sort of to bridge. That's why you want people who are sort of knowledgeable and productive almost immediately, because the investment is usually fairly big for you to get these people, then to keep them, and then you need to actually make money from the software that they are producing and so forth. So there's all these factors that play in, right? Which means that the amount of available jobs for junior level profiles, they usually get snatched up really, really quickly. And so you have like a lot of juniors trying to fight over a small portion of the jobs available, whereas you have a smaller amount of senior super experienced developer like the senior experienced developers who have an abundance of opportunities, because like you cannot fill the headcount with the seniors. It's not possible, because there are so many that you need. And so the average junior software developer is looking at a situation where you're basically trying to find any position whatsoever where they're looking for juniors. And the problem now is that if you find such a job, you are just most likely one person out of a lot of people who are going to be applicable for that job. And if you have 2 months of experience, I can guarantee you that there are people who are vastly more qualified to take on that role than you. And the reason being very simply that the companies have access to everything from like people who are self-taught all and to people who have like master's degrees in computer science, etc., etc. There's tons of talent out there at the junior level, and most of them have invested 1 to 5 years of experience, because that is roughly the amount of time it's going to take you to learn the basics of what it requires of you to actually produce software in any meaningful way. So realistically, I think that it's unlikely that you're going to get anywhere with 2 months of experience. You can try it out, and if you are extraordinarily lucky, there are training programs, and some companies sort of like, are very, very nice and like offer like enormous amounts of leeway for people like who is trying to learn and so forth and so forth. But usually these programs I've even seen a few where they actually explicitly state that they're only helping people who have graduated, like they have some type of college degree or something like that, and that means that that's also a 5-year experience, 5-year investment. So if you haven't even gotten to that point, it might be even more difficult for you. So I think that it's highly unrealistic for you to get like any type of job opportunities after 2 months. And the way that you can fix this is pretty much how you do all the juniors are doing it. You can of course go to college if you want to and get like a computer science degree, which is you don't have to do that. It's not necessary per se. It does usually help you a little bit in the beginning of things, but it's not like a hard requirement for you to get into the industry. But apart from that, you're going to have to get some fairly serious time under your belt. I suggest to you to look at some boot camps. I suggest to you to take courses on these different platforms, and then when you have gotten to a point where you can consistently produce applications, you should start looking at trying to build up your portfolio a little bit with personal projects, things of that nature. And if you're lucky, if you work really, 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 really hard, you might be able to do that in a few more months or something like that. And then all you can really do is test the waters. Throw out a CV, start making some calls, or like so forth and so forth, and see what the feedback is. So what I want you to take away from this is that 2 months is usually a lot less than the average junior software developer has on their CV before they start becoming interesting for junior positions. You're looking at on average 1 to 5 years roughly. The reason I say that specific number is that if you take a look at the job postings, at least in my region, and I've checked a few in the US and India and so forth as well, it's usually the same thing. That's roughly the range of experience a person the companies are looking for when they're looking for junior profiles. And the difficulty here is that's work experience, which basically means that you have that first job is sometimes even trickier than you might imagine to actually get, because a junior needs work experience in many cases to be allowed to work as a junior, which makes the whole thing really, really weird, right? And so the reason why it's structured in this really weird way is because the vast majority of companies don't want to train junior profiles because they have a surplus of juniors. Like, you can hire tons and tons of juniors, but you have to produce something as well, which brings us to the mid-levels and the seniors, which are the people who can sort of produce without any help. They're trained. These people are a minority in comparison to the amount of juniors that you're looking for, but they need more they have like endless amounts of needs for these sorts of people. But the juniors themselves, they're usually not, and some companies don't even hire juniors, and so there's no way for you to even get an interview for a certain company because they're simply not hiring juniors. And so you're already limited in terms of job prospects. And the average junior, if you look at the statistics, about 80% of all the software developers in the world, based on the Stack Overflow's report, the last one I read, has a bachelor's degree. And 10% or something like that, 5% has a master's. So 80% of them have at least a 5-year investment into this thing before if you think about like holistically, all the software developers have almost everybody has a bachelor's degree, so the thresholds usually start there, and there is a bit of a prejudice for self-taught developers. That doesn't mean that that's a deal breaker, it's just that you can sort of bet on that your investment is going to have to rival roughly the same sort of investment that the bachelor's students have. It's not always the case. You can get really lucky, but the only thing you can really do is to start taking some courses, build up your CV, add things to your portfolio, and start making some calls or apply for some jobs and see what happens. Don't be like disheartened if it's a bit tricky in the beginning, because as I said, the hard part of becoming a software developer, quote unquote the first hard part, is to just get the first job. Because once you have the first job and you get a bit of experience on your CV, and assuming of course that you're sort of able to do the work in a decent fashion, things get a lot easier once you have a few years on your CV, because once you get to that point, you're proven to know what you're doing, and it's the unproven software developers who are usually a risk for, or like a little bit of a risk situation for the companies. So when they're looking for juniors, they're usually looking for people who already have experience, even though it's not a lot. Have a great day.